Well, I want to thank Terry and Marianne Jenny for joining us again this week to do another webinar regarding finances. And last time we got together, they shared with us about the CARES Act and how you could manage things in the CARES Act for your person and for your family. This week, we're going to be talking about state and federal resources that might be available to folks that they may not know about. And we're so thankful to have you back again. So thank you, Jenny, for joining us during this time. For those who are participating with us in the audience, we would ask if you've got questions to please use the chat feature, not the Q&A feature, but the chat feature. And then we're going to rebroadcast this, and hopefully that will generate a lot of questions for folks either today or afterwards that they can write to us using arcfinances2020@gmail.com, and we'll put that up at the end of this session as well. But with that, Jenny's, I'd like to turn this over to you and say again, thank you very much for sharing your time, and take it away.
All right, thank you. Our pleasure. I'm going to share our screen, and while that is loading here, there it should be up. Are you seeing it, George?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. We are very happy to be back. We had a lot of fun with the last one. Absolutely. And hope that we are providing information that is touching all kinds of people, whatever their need is. So what we're going to focus on today are to give you kind of an overview of some of the federal, state, and even the local resources that are out there. We're not going to cover everything about them, but at least give you some overview and help you to navigate the plethora of resources that are out there, because there really is quite a bit. So what specifically we're going to talk about today, whereas last time we talked about unemployment for employees, today we're going to just touch on what about the person who's self-employed or they're an independent contractor that typically are not eligible for unemployment. We'll touch on the CARES Act and the effect of the CARES Act on student loans, foreclosures, evictions. We'll touch a little bit about retirement accounts, healthcare coverage, and then we'll point you to some great resources online if you have access to a computer. Those who are on the call right now obviously do. And with that, I'll turn it over to Terry.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Marianne. If you were fortunate to join us on our last webinar, there's something, I look a little bit different. My hair back then had gotten, how do I put it, a bit unruly is a generous term. But after being furloughed with me for 3 weeks, I was reluctant to put a scissors in my wife's hand. I'm a bit annoying, but desperate times call for desperate measures. So I did get the haircut. And I think I can speak for both George and myself that our childhood dreams of sporting a man bun have probably come to an end.
There's no man bun in my future.
Oh, Ben, thank goodness for that. Oh, my goodness sakes.
So I just want to start out by saying that we know that many of you are not only burdened with certain financial stresses, but a lot of people are also feeling the desperation that comes with isolation and loneliness. And I know for Mary and I, when we get despondent or down a little bit, we often turn to the Bible. So I'm just going to share a Bible passage that I hope brings some strength to you as it does me. It's Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And I think for those people who might be feeling this thing, again, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to the church and the church personnel. They're doing their very best to reach out to people in need. With that said.
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. So I am wanting to get to so that I can see the chat box. And for some reason,
sorry,
George, I cannot see the
down
chat
at the bottom.
box.
If you drop your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, there should be a
it's
spot
not
there.
popping up for some weird reason.
In that case, I will let you know. I'm able to see that from my perspective. So
perfect. All right.
Great. With that, I'm going to jump right in. If you were joined us in our last webinar, we went through a lot of the rules and how the CARES Act affects regular employees with regard to unemployment compensation. And during that webinar, we touched just very briefly on self-employed people, independent contractors and whatnot, who aren't normally eligible under state guidelines. That not being eligible under state guidelines continues today. But the CARES Act has a special section. It's called the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And if you're self-employed and independent contractor, there are some other categories that fit within that. You still can apply and you still might be eligible for unemployment benefits through that federal act, not necessarily through state guidelines. So that the benefits under that program are still going to be administered by the state. They're in partnership with the feds, and they've finally gotten their website up to snuff. It was kind of a really frustrating experience trying to file an application for a self-employed person before. It was slow. The reviews have been slow and burdensome, so it was really frustrating. I'm happy to report today that over the last couple of weeks, the Minnesota Unemployment website, excuse me, has gotten a whole lot better. And they now have a step-by-step guide for self-employed and independent contractors. And one of the things I want to do first is to just map out how you get there. But first I want to talk about, benefits that are available for people who are self-employed and independent contractors. It's based on your net income. If your net income was $24,300 or less in 2019, you're going to qualify maybe for a minimum benefit. There's still a minimum amount of earnings, but the minimum payment in Minnesota is $234 a week. If you have more net income than $24,300, your weekly benefit could increase up to a maximum of $740 per week. And as we know with the state guidelines, if you qualify for a payment under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, you're also going to receive that $600 a week from another section of the CARES Act. So you not only get your minimum payment, but you also get that $600 add-on through July 31st as it now stands. And again, if you do qualify, you can collect those unemployment benefits for up to 39 weeks. So here's the map that I want to show everybody. So you log into Minnesota, you'll see Marianne has it circled where it says applicants. You punch that button. The next screen that should come up will be COVID-19, and she has the learn more. You click that button, and now you kind of see that relatively new section that says self-employed and independent contractors. You click that, and you come to the next screen, and you'll get this. How do I apply? Step-by-step instructions on how to apply if you're self-employed. So she's got the red arrow. You click on that, and it is going to take you screen by screen through that application process. So if you have another smart device like a smartphone, put up their responses with your application, because they have questions now that are specific to your situation. And if you answer them properly, and they give you a lot of guidance on that, it will speed up your review process, and it will allow that application to be approved or acted upon more quickly. The nice thing about being self-employed or an independent contractor is there are some special rules with regard to these weekly benefits, PUA benefits. It's retroactive, okay? They've had so much trouble getting the site up, they basically had to build it from scratch. So they've had trouble getting the site up, and under the CARES Act, so those unemployment benefits are retroactive. They're retroactive to either January 27th, 2020, or your first date where you were of unemployment or when your business was severely curtailed. So you don't have to do anything special. They'll ask you questions in that application process when that event occurred. And if the system is up and running, as it's supposed to be by now, they will backdate those payments through the first date you were unemployed. And that's different than if you're a regular employee. Independent contractors and self-employed people, again, that's one benefit, is you can retroactively apply to the first day you're unemployed. I will tell you the application process takes longer because they want to verify financial information. So if you filed your tax return for 2019, they're just going to hop over to the Department of Revenue, get some information from them, and verify that financial information. If you have not filed your taxes, have your financial information ready. You might get a letter from them. They might want a verification of that. And there's also supposed to be a self-certification that your reason for being unemployed is due to a COVID-19 related event. If you get it, just answer it and send it back in. And while that application is being processed, if the system allows you, make those weekly benefit requests. It's going to probably come up 0 until your application is approved. But when your application is approved, again, retroactive payments. So that's a nice benefit. If you don't know, if you're not sure that you qualify, apply. I think that was a suggestion for people who don't know whether they qualify for regular unemployment benefits. If you don't know, apply. Worst thing they could do is say no.
Yep.
I'm just going to take a minute and touch on federal student loans. Anybody who's paying back student loans, or maybe parents are paying back student loans, I just want to touch on how the CARES Act has affected that. So from the period March 13th to September 2020, September 30th, 2020, all payments are suspended. And if you're doing by auto pay, they're going to stop that. Okay, so all payments are suspended. During that time frame, they have to be federal direct student loans backed by the federal government. They're not going to accrue interest. So you're not going to get hurt not making payments. They're not going to do any adverse reporting with regard to credit reporting agencies. No special application is needed. It just happens automatically. One of the nice things, if you can continue to make those student loan payments, one of the nice things is any payments you make between that period of time goes directly to principal. There are no interest payments. So if you make the payments, you're going to pay down that loan faster, because everything you pay between now and September 30th, 2020 is going to go directly to principal. It doesn't have to be your regular payment. You can call them and you can make payments as you want. The one thing I am going to tell you, if you want to continue to make those auto payments, you have to contact them. They're automatically going to suspend them. So if you want to continue to make those payments, contact them and let them know that you want to continue. A lot of colleges and universities also have come up with special COVID-19 related packages, and they are different depending upon the institution of higher learning. So if you filed your FAFSA, it's basically based on financial information from last year, and here you are today before the fall term starts, and maybe mom or dad or both have become unemployed and that financial information has changed. I encourage you to contact the financial aid office of your college or your kid's college and see what remedies might be available. You might be able to appeal for more financial aid. It might be a painstaking process depending upon the university, but it might be well worth it in the end.
Hey, Terry, I've got a question.
Yes.
There was rumors flying around early about the federal student loans, like they were going to forgive the loans, and that was part of a political push to forgive the loans. And what I hear you saying is that's not the case. What the case is that they can be suspended, but you'll still have to pay those loans off. Is that correct?
That is currently the case.
Yeah.
I'm just going to bring up the screen on a piece of legislation that's currently working its way through the Senate. There has been additional provisions in that piece of legislation, but it hasn't passed yet, that would allow for some forgiveness of these loans for COVID-19 related purposes. They do have forgiveness regularly if you find yourself in a hardship. But as of now, as it stands today, payments are suspended, interest is suspended. You still have to make the payments when the pandemic emergency is over. Mm-hmm. If legislation is passed that affects that, it's been our goal to try and update people on the provisions of that particular legislation. But as of today, No forgiveness, no additional forgiveness of student loans is available under the CARES Act.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
Right. There, like I said, I'm just going to point you to the U.S. Department of Education website. Mary has circled defer student loans. It might have some information on there about forgiveness, but again, that doesn't encompass anything new necessarily. If it does and that legislation passes, we're going to let you know about it.
Yeah. Related to COVID.
Related to COVID-19,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
The CARES Act. A lot of people, we got a lot of questions about foreclosures and evictions. If you have a federally backed loan, FHA, VA, US Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, the CARES Act set up a provision that they can't foreclose on your loan for non-payment of mortgage payments. It's a little open-ended. Nobody knows really what the time frame is in that act, but for now, they can't foreclose on you if you aren't making your payments. And we're going to talk a little bit about whether that relieves your obligation to make the payments. It does not, but they can't foreclose if you can't make the payments. One of the nice things about the CARES Act and those types of federally backed mortgages, if you call whoever your service provider is, it might be Wells Fargo, but it might be an FHA insured loan. Whoever you call, if you request it, they will enter into a payment deferment program with you. And if it's a federally backed loan, it's up to 180 days. And then within that 180 days, if your financial situation is still dire, you can call and you can request another 180 days. So you put it out about a year. That, again, is not going to suspend that the payments are due. It's just going to mean they're going to work with you, defer your payments during this emergency, and we'll figure out either a repayment plan. And there's lots of options. They're going to put it on the back of the loan. They'll set up as a short-term loan with very favorable provisions in it. But they're going to try, excuse me, and gear it towards your personal financial situation.
Without any ding to your credit.
That, again, that's part of the CARES Act. No late fees for non-payment. They can't report you as being delinquent to any credit reporting agency if you entered into this forbearance period of 180 days, okay? Minnesota also has an executive order from our government. He has suspended the landlord's ability to file an eviction for non-payment of rent. Again, it doesn't forgive you or relieve you of the obligation to pay rent. It just means that if you can't, during this pandemic emergency, we're not going to evict you. He has also requested that all financial institution holding home mortgages, whether it's Wells Fargo or whoever it is, that they implement an immediate moratorium on pending and future foreclosures. So it's a lot like the Federal Act. It sort of mirrors the Federal Act. Again, it's a little open-ended because it's going to last for as long as he declares there's a pandemic emergency. It can only be extended for 30 days. So on May 14th, he extended it to June 12th. Prior to June 12th, he can extend it again. We don't know that that will happen, but at some point, this emergency setting is going to end. And then the payments are going to become due. And again, it doesn't relieve you, excuse me, of your obligation to pay rent or mortgage payments during this emergency. It only means that if you can't pay, they can't foreclose and they can't evict. This is a very opportune time to contact your landlord. A lot of landlords are sitting out there and they're having a cash flow crisis because a lot of tenants lost their jobs and they're having a hard time paying rent. So they might change up your lease a little bit, reduce your payments for 6 months to get some sort of cash flow going. And then when you come out, you resume your regular rent payments. Same thing with landlords. I know Wells Fargo, and I'm sure a lot of other lenders are working with customers. If you call, they'll grant you a 3-month deferment payment, whether it's a car loan, a credit card, or a home loan, okay? They'll give you that 30 days, and their only request is you contact them, okay? They want to work with you, but you have to contact them. And then at the end of that 3-month period, you can request another 3-month period, but they want to hear from you then, and they want to take another look at your financial situation. And again, they're going to work with you when this whole thing ends on payments that weren't made or payments that were deferred, something like that. So during this time, I think our suggestion is be proactive. Not a time to take the ostrich approach and stick your head in the sand and hope it all gets better. Get on the phone with those lenders, get on the phone with those landlords, and you might just find that there's some really good opportunities to relieve some of the stress you're feeling because maybe I can't make the house payment. And don't
Terry and Marianne, I've talked to a couple of landlords or business owners or folks that own rental property, and they're saying that what you're saying is exactly right. The most important thing is just to reach out and say, listen, I'm furloughed. I can't pay my full amount, but I can pay this amount. And they're like, anything that you can do to show good faith during this time is going to be really important. So,
right.
So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
I mean, you may be a really good tenant, and because of circumstances beyond your control, suddenly, your ability to pay has been compromised. Mm-hmm. But do that, and they may want to keep you, in there as long as they can, and they know you're struggling. If you let them know you're struggling, you're honest with them. A lot of landlords will work something out with you.
They'd rather have a partial payment than no payment at all. So
plus, a lot of landlords don't want to get to the end of this process, and they got a bunch of evictions now that they have to do. That's a time-consuming, expensive process, and a lot of them would rather just work with you. Let's work through this, and at the end of it, we'll get back on track. Retirement accounts. There's been a lot of questions about retirement accounts. I am not a financial planner, and I don't plan one on TV. Hopefully, we've got one coming. So I'm going to preface this with saying that I think for most financial planners, taking a withdrawal from your retirement account should be a last resort, okay? You can ask him when he's here, but that's what I've heard. It's a last resort. If you can avoid it and do something else, try to take other actions. But I am going to touch on it because the CARES Act, which is basically the all-encompassing act for anything related to COVID-19, does have some special provisions that apply specifically to withdrawals from retirement accounts. Generally, there are 2 ways to take money. Previous to the CARES Act, there's 2 ways. You can take a loan from your retirement account. You had to pay it back with interest over a 5-year period. Not so bad because that interest and principal goes back into your retirement account and it's there for your benefit. And then there was a hardship withdrawal, and a lot of people are worried about that, and rightly so. A hardship withdrawal, in addition to having to pay the taxes, they were going to withhold 20% of whatever your withdrawal was. There was also a 10% penalty. So if you wanted to take $10,000 as a withdrawal, as a hardship withdrawal out of your retirement account, you're going to pay $1,000 in penalties, 10%. I think the government understands that during these tough times, a retirement account might be the only place you have to go to get cash now. So they've kind of come up with this COVID-19 withdrawal, as a lot of people are calling it. And what that says is that that 10% penalty, it's a penalty if you're not 59 and a half. That 10% penalty is waived in 2020 up to a $100,000 withdrawal from your retirement account. In addition, you generally have to pay the taxes quickly, but the taxes can be paid or can be extended over a 3-year period, or you can recontribute those funds over a 3-year period and not pay taxes at all. I'm just going to say, if you are considering a withdrawal, consider a loan. And you always want to check with your employer about the rules. The rules are set up by your employer with regard to that retirement account, and the CARES Act doesn't make it mandatory. So before you consider this option, make sure you've checked with your employer and find out exactly what their rules are. Mm-hmm. And the last point I want to make on this is your PTO. Know what your company's policy is with regard to PTO.
Personal time off.
Yes, personal time off, sorry. We call it PTO because that's sort of the Mayo Clinic term for it. And
other places do too.
Yeah, Marianne works there. I checked the rules just at the Mayo Clinic yesterday. So some PTO plans are use it or lose it. And some are, during periods, they might buy it back. Mayo Clinic is one of those. If you're outside open enrollment, they'll buy it back at 85% of its value. But if you sell it back to the clinic during open enrollment, at least as the rules stand today, you can sell it back. There's a minimum and a maximum, but you can sell it back at 100% of its value. And as you're thinking about this, it may be a way of getting cash down the road. So if you've taken a loan out, maybe you can pay it back using the cash from that sale of PTO. So know what your company's policy is. I'm reluctant to even mention this, but we've had a lot of questions on it, George. So the HEROES Act, there's this big piece, $3 trillion legislation. It has passed the House. That's as far as it's gotten. And from everything I've read, it's dead in the water when it gets to the Senate. Now, I don't know that for sure, and we can't spend our guesses, but.
Was it a partisan vote in the House?
What's that?
Was it a strictly partisan vote in the House?
Yep, pretty much straight partisan vote. 208 to 199, if I recall correctly. So it was pretty close, but there may have been some Democrats even that voted against it, but I know it was pretty much a partisan vote. And it hasn't been approved by the Senate. And it hasn't been signed by the president. It is not law. So if you're waiting for a stimulus check because you heard the HEROES Act pass the House, don't hold your breath. Nothing's coming yet. There are some provisions in the HEROES Act that I think would gain some bipartisan support. I've listed them there. I'm going to let you look at them. And this is when they get together and hopefully negotiate something that probably isn't going to happen until after the July 4th holiday. These will kind of be the things they're focusing on, but I'm going to stress none of this is law. Don't be waiting for a stimulus check. Nothing has passed. A lot of people, if you've lost your employment, you've also lost your employer-provided health care, and that can be a major problem. Minnesota has set up some special rules, some special guidelines, and some special enrollment periods to help with that. MNsure has a program that you have to apply for it within 60 days of losing your employer-provided health care. And medical assistance, Minnesota Care, and Medicaid all have programs that will subsidize, will provide subsidies, because suddenly you're unemployed. Not only am I unemployed, I've lost my health care. We're going to help you out. We're going to provide some finances for you to purchase health care. If you have any questions on that, hit our email account with a question, and we'll try to get back to you. State and local resources. Well, this is a big topic, and
we could be here all day.
Yeah, well, there are so many resources between the state, the county, and local resources that we don't want to go into it all.
What I'm hearing you say is that there's a lot of resources, and that we just need to ask. We just need to go searching a little bit, and if you need help, we could reach out.
Right. If you don't have a computer, let us know. We'll make sure we get you whatever information you need. But
Here's
this is just
website.
Yeah, this is the state, and a lot of these state programs are administered by the county, but it has some general topics. So if you're interested in any of those, maybe you need cash for assistance, for utilities, for food, for cash for help with daycare. There's some great resources on this, and so I'm going to point you to the website.
Minnesota.gov, MN.gov, I should say.
And the last one I'm going to talk about is Olmsted County resources. It took us a little while to find this, but again, this is a map. You go to the website that Mary has there, you click on COVID-19 news and updates, you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to hit that resources, orange resources button, and she's put an arrow by community resources. And what this is a list of companies, organizations, Channel One, Charter Communications, things that they have for people in need. It might be pet food. It might be diapers. It might be school lunches, weekend lunches, free pizza. Everyone's needs are different. And, you know, it's easy for us to focus on what our needs are. We haven't needed diapers. My son is 30. We haven't needed diapers in our house for 10 years. Yeah.
Maybe a little longer.
I guess that means we didn't have a potty train until he was 20.
Yeah, he's hearing this. He's going, Mom and Dad, what are you doing? Okay.
Sorry, right guy. He was a bit of a late bloomer. I will say that. But anyway, whatever you need or whatever you're looking for, there's probably something on this site that might be specific to you. You know, it just entails everything. It's just a long list of companies, what they're offering, and a phone number to contact them. So it's real easy to navigate. There's also sites, if you're listening to this and you have the ability to either volunteer, or maybe you have things, you know, a box of Pampers sitting around and the grandkids are gone, of where to donate things for people who are in need. So I just think that's a great resource, and visit the site.
Yeah, Terry, can I make a comment here quick?
Yes.
I noticed when I started with the church that that our church had put together a document that showed all the resources that you could get in Rochester or in Olmsted County, and I was astounded by the number of resources that are available. There's no reason, for example, there's no reason for a family to go hungry at any day of the week. Now you might have to go to different places throughout the week, but there's food available. There are resources available. There's counseling available. There's so many things that are out there in Olmsted County that just make this a great place to live. And if you're in hardship, it makes it easier for everybody. So this is a great resource for you. So thank you.
And if you're not in Olmsted County, if people watching this are not in Olmsted County, you know, maybe live in Pine Island or what have you, check those county resources as well, because there's probably things there.
Right. Well, I'm going to conclude, and I want to conclude from our standpoint. It has been an honor to do this. There's so many people to thank. I want to give a special shout out. I have not met him in person, but I know he's behind the scenes, and that's Alonzo. I know he puts these together. I haven't met him in person. I'm going to remedy that as soon as the church is back open.
Yeah, Alonzo has been a tremendous resource, and he has a wonderful heart for the Lord. We're thankful to have him.
From our perspective, we want to do a special shout out to our fearless leader, George. I know he has been working tirelessly during this whole time to reach out to people in need. And from us and from them, George, we simply say thank you, knowing all too well that thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, Jennings, thank you very much. This is really a privilege to be a part of our church and a part of our community where we can help each other. We've been called to do that, to love the Lord and to love others more than we love ourselves. And to do that, we need to be able to share what we do have with others. And so thank you, Jenny family. And I also wanted to mention that once again, if you've got questions, that you send them to arcfinances2020@gmail.com. If you have any questions, you send those out. Either the Jennies or myself, somebody is going to reach back out to you personally and find out what we can do for you. We've also got some good news coming in the future. Next week, next Thursday at 1 o'clock, we have our next webinar. And Marianne, I wonder if you could introduce the host of next week's webinar.
Sure. Frank Allen. Frank, actually, I went to high school with Frank, so I've known Frank a very long time, and he is a financial planner. He works at Mayo Clinic. He's a division chair within the Office of Staff Services, very knowledgeable, and he has very graciously agreed to do this webinar next week.
All right, so great. If you've got questions about future financial planning and what you can do, and maybe dive a little bit deeper into the topic that Terry brought up earlier about what do I do with my 401k, my IRA at this time, what's the wise thing to do during this time? Are we taking advantage of all those other resources that the Jennies brought to our attention today? So good.
Be diligent and be proactive.
Yes, absolutely, and that's great advice. So I wonder, with that, if I could close in prayer.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the Jenny family. We thank you so much for our church. For those who are watching either live or recorded of this video, we pray that you would bless them during this tough financial time. Father, give us that courage that you encourage us to have, that we should fear not, that we should trust in you, Lord, and that we should trust in the fellowship of our church as well, in our community. And we're so thankful to be here. So many blessings despite the distractions that we have with this pandemic. Father, we lift these prayers up to you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. And again, if you've got questions, do email those to us and let us know what you've got. Blessings.